An elven warrior trapped on modern-day Earth. Two friends with different destinies meet at a magical school. These are some of the stories we at Electric Lips Comics are working on. You can get your copies of both The Mana Chronicles and Tales of Mithril at elpmerch.com. Support independent creators, explore the merch featuring exciting ELP Comics art with a wide range of designs. Electric Lips Comics. Imagination electrified.
Welcome to the Mostly Pottered at Night. Mostly, I am Salem, joined by my co-host Graveyard.
Hello.
This is episode 124 of our weekly All Things Horror podcast. Knowing who we are, or who we project ourselves as, is an important part of our human identity. What happens when that identity is lost? What happens when there are parts of our identity hidden even from ourselves? What happens if you lose a part of yourself, but then try to find it again? These questions and more will be examined in the following three films. I guess they're kind of pushing the line of what horror is.
It's psychological thrillers. I'd count that as horror.
I mean, yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Traditional wise. Right. But yes, but anyway, so we're doing Session 9, Shutter Island, and The Endless. Yeah.
So Shutter Island recap's going to be, I'm throwing out there quick just because it's a long movie.
Well, all of them are pretty quick. There's not a whole lot you can really explain.
Right.
It's more like you're experiencing the things, but like as soon as you say what is happening, it kind of ruins the magic of what's happening in the film. So
right. So spoilers for these movies if you haven't seen them, because if you go into it knowing it, I think it ruins the experience.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Session 9 maybe not, because there's still enough happening to where it's just interesting stuff happening. It still takes away some of the mystery, sure. But I think that one wouldn't be that bad. The Endless, you're really only spoiling the first half of it. Right. If you say what's going on. And then, yeah, Shutter Island, you basically ruin the whole movie. Like, it's one of those movies, like, if I tell you what the ending is, it will ruin the whole movie.
So, like I said, I'm sure everyone knows Shutter Island's ending, but like I said, we're saying spoilers now.
I mean, it's 15 years old at this point, but
right.
But just it is a good movie. So if you have not seen it, I would suggest watching it first, because having the story spoiled for you would not be great.
Correct.
Anyway, we'll start off with Session 9 from 2001. One of the movies in David Caruso's failed acting career, outside of his, because he was really big in, what was the first show he was really big in?
That's where he took off the sunglasses.
No, that was his comeback.
That was his comeback?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. He
was in a show before that.
What decade?
I don't remember. I'm not sure which show was which, but he was in a big show, a really big show. And then he left at the peak of that show's height, right? Because he thought he was Mr. Big Pants and he was going to go out and have this great film career. And he put out several. I mean, I think most of his movies are interesting, but they did not do well box office wise. We'll just say that they did not do well box office wise. So then he came back to TV.
Was it NYPD Blue?
Yes.
Okay.
NYPD Blue. He was the big star. NYPD Blue was huge at the time. It was the biggest show on TV. Period. And he was at the peak of that show. He was like getting paid enough, and he was, had his head was so puffed up I'm gonna go be a film actor, and he was successful getting films, but none of those films did well enough for him to like make a real career. So then he came back, and I would say, funny enough, I'd say he's probably more well known for the second
CSI.
Right. I think he's probably more well known for that, which is funny because he was whatever. It's interesting that he like literally remade himself in TV. Like he somehow got lucky enough to be in like the biggest show on TV twice.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. I don't know. I think he's still doing that show. I don't even know if it's still around, but he might be still doing it.
I don't think so.
Whatever. But yeah, so this was one of the films that he came out with. It was like this one and Jade. There's a couple other ones, but those are the two that I like. I enjoy those movies. I guess, whatever. But okay, Session 9. If I tell you the story of this movie, it's going to be like a paragraph. It really is not a lot happens here.
Correct.
It's mostly an experience of like, seeing what's going on all around you. Anyway,
yeah, you're solving the mystery.
Right. So essentially it's a couple of guys that own a asbestos removal company. Okay. Then there's this giant old insane asylum that they're trying to like repurpose for something else. And it's been shut down for years. Like it's been shut down for, at the point of the movie, I think like 20 years.
Yeah, they said it shut down like 85 and this movie was 2001. So
right.
Maybe like 15. Yeah.
Right. I mean, the building looks worse than that, but whatever. It's so yeah, whatever. 20 years. So they have to remove all the asbestos, tiles, ceilings, pipe, insulation, all that stuff. They remove all the asbestos and strip it out. That's what their company does. That's what they do.
Seemingly in only 3 rooms.
Well, I mean, they only need to show. I'm sure there's a lot more, but they only the events of the film only happen in 3 rooms.
Yeah.
So essentially they take the job. It's supposed to be at the very least a 2-week job, but the guy promises that he'll do it in a week because he desperately needs the job. The owner of the asbestos removal company.
Mm-hmm.
Now you just gotta say the story because like there's a whole lot of like, hints and hints and hints of what's going on. But essentially what happens is the guy, gets drunk that night because they gave him the job, which means he's basically saved his career.
Right.
And saved the company. So he went out, got drunk and got happy and then went home. And his wife accidentally spilled boiling water on him and he hit her.
Yep.
And so she kicked him out and he's like been living in a hotel and essentially like is having like a mental breakdown. Because he's like, the stress of the job, trying to get it done in a week. The company might be going down. Like he got lucky to get this job, but like, what about the next job? All of these things kind of, coming together to be like this perfect stress storm to where he's like breaking down mentally.
Yeah. I mean, asbestos removal only goes so far because there's only so much to do.
Right. Yeah. There's only so many giant old government buildings that need asbestos removal.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, David Caruso is like basically his partner. And there's a couple other guys that are on his team. There's a total of 5 of them. Well, so it's the guy, David Caruso, like his partner, kind of like a younger veteran on the team who is like a guy that stole David Caruso's girlfriend. And so they hate each other, but they still like work together. Mm-hmm. And then there's like the kind of veteran dude who seems like easily distracted, I guess is what you could say, the one dude, and then like the owner guy's nephew, who's just kind of like a dumb kid who's afraid of the dark, like literally has nyctophobia, afraid of the dark.
Right. He's not afraid of the party.
Right. Right. So essentially, yeah. So as the days go by, they kind of realize that they're gonna need some help anyway. So the one guy, the guy that stole David Caruso's girlfriend, he finds like a treasure in the basement, which appears to be all of the like loose change and like, shit that was in these people's pockets, like when they were being cremated.
Yeah. It's what they either brought in with, because there's no way they'd be alive with all that shit on them.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But anyway, so it's something happened to where like, when the people are getting cremated, somehow their personal possessions, which is mostly change, ended up inside the wall. And when he was like, marking the asbestos pipes, he, knocked a brick loose in the wall, and like all of this money came out of the wall. So he's like, essentially, oh, I'm going to just take this money and retire. So that's what we're kind of led to believe. He's like, he hears some things and he's like looking around in the building, but then it kind of cuts out. We don't see what happens. The next day he doesn't show up for work. David Caruso calls his girlfriend, right? Because it was his girlfriend. That guy then stole her, right? He calls her and goes, hey, what's going on? He didn't show up to work. Oh, okay. That's interesting. Bye. Oh yeah. He said, she told me that he said he was going to casino school in Miami and he's not coming back. Okay.
Yep. Great cover.
They're all like, okay. So there's like this other guy that he's like, oh, I know this other guy that I can hire. Let's, we'll hire that guy. He'll come, the next day, whatever. So, they basically go back to work. There's a couple of days in here. There's a side story of, like I said, the one veteran guy who seems very easily distracted ends up finding this like box marked as evidence, and he opens it up and there's all these like session tapes, like old reel-to-reel session tapes. And it's basically a separate plot line, but it's like, it's interspersed throughout the film. I'm just going to say, but anyway. So it's a girl that has multiple personalities. And the multiple personalities had changed to like, she had gotten a porcelain doll for Christmas. Her brother accidentally scared her and she dropped the doll and then fell on it. So like the doll was completely smashed and then she got cut on the doll because it was a porcelain doll. And she basically snapped and killed her brother and her parents.
Yep.
And it's like one of her other personalities did the murder. Obviously, she has no memory of it. And there's like, I think there's 4 personalities. So there's like the Mary Hobbs is the lady, Princess, who's like the little innocent girl,
Billy, the kid.
Billy, who's the guy who sees everything and protects Princess and Mary, and then there's Simon, who is like the evil demon, right? That the one that did the murder, the one that they usually don't let out, but when it comes out when she's upset. Anyway, that's the whole thing. That whole subplot is basically him listening to all these tapes, and they're all labeled as session numbers. So that's where the name of the movie comes from, is session 9, which is the last session where you finally hear Simon, the bad guy, talk.
Yes.
That's a whole subplot of the film where it gets the name from. Anyway, so the main part of the film, the next day, the nephew is like, getting, going down to check the breakers in the basement. He's scared of the dark, so he's kind of running back and forth. Anyway, he sees the guy, the dude that, supposedly went to casino school. He sees them. It's wandering around. And so he goes and gets everybody like, hey, I found him. He's wandering around. They go and look. Of course, he's not there.
Yep.
So then, they kind of split up and they go to search for him. Of course, when they're down there, the generator gives out. So the kid with nyctophobia like flips the fuck out because it's totally dark down there because David Caruso took his flashlight. And David Caruso, I guess from this point on, it's just all spoilers, right? So
yeah, all spoilers.
Essentially, from this point, this is the real story. Like what we see is like he sees the dude down there, but then like this is the movie goes. He just comes back up, and then the movie just continues.
Yeah.
But really what he does is he finds that guy down there with the lobotomy spike in his eye.
Yeah.
So he's been lobotomized. The spike is still in his eye. And he's like obviously lobotomized, and all he can say is, "What are you doing here?" Over and over again. So he the fake story is they keep going, and then it seems like David Caruso is trying to cover up his murder of this guy, and like one by one they all kind of get taken out. So the nephew gets taken out. The guy that was listening to the tapes gets taken out. And then the very end of it is the guy that was hired to replace the dude that went to casino school is coming in like going, hey, where is everybody? Like, I thought we were supposed to get this done, you know? And he comes in and basically he gets strangled by the owner of the company. And at this point, now we find out that the owner of the company strangled him. And yes, but he also killed everyone else.
Yes. Gordon snapped.
Right. He snapped because of, like, again, that stress storm I was talking about. All that stuff happened. And his mental breakdown was more than, just him being stressed out. Like, he literally flipped out and killed everybody.
Yep.
So yeah, he was the one that was staying, because he was said he was staying in a hotel. I think he was just sleeping in his van on site. And so that's why when he saw lights on, he went in to see what the dude was doing, found him, then killed him with the lobotomy spike for whatever reason, and left him wandering around in the basement. And so anyway, so yeah, everybody gets killed by him, and then the movie just kind of ends.
Yeah.
Now there's a kind of like some weird stuff that they don't fully explain, right? Because they constantly keep going back to the point of the patients, because in 85 they just closed the place down. The patients didn't go anywhere. Right. They just said, sorry, you can't be here anymore. Go find something else to do, which is sad because
the world. That's what happened.
Yeah, that really happened. Like, it was scary because there was one by my old bowling alley when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. There was one literally right down the street, and that's what they did. And when at that time period when I was there, they just went, shut it down, sorry guys. And they would just like wander the neighborhood, and like they didn't do they didn't try to find them homes or anything. They just like, see you later. But anyway, that's what happened, is a lot of them came back to the hospital and just like squatted there because they didn't know what else to do.
Right.
Because these are all people that have, mental issues, various stages of mental breakdown, what else are you going to do? So it's kind of like possibly insinuated that one or maybe more of these guys are one of those patients.
Oh, easily.
Right.
Easily insinuated that Gordon was one of those patients.
Right. Right. Because there's like a room that he keeps going back to with all these pictures on the walls, and he seems to like feel at home there.
Right.
And he puts his own family's pictures on that wall later, like, and whatever. It really seems like he was one of those patients, and that he had somehow built a life for himself, and then now that he's back there, he just broke down.
It's also heavily implied that he didn't just, hit his wife; that he killed his wife and kid.
Yeah, it's possible. Again, we don't know. Again, there's a lot of things that are not explained.
Yeah. I mean, it's we'll get into that. So, I mean, was this your first time seeing it, or have you seen this before?
No, I've seen it multiple times before.
So, I was watching this, and I don't know, like, I was watching this with the wife, and she goes, "It's clearly Gordon," and I go, "Yes," like within like 20 minutes. 25 minutes. Like,
guys and you make up that you know everything all the time. You constantly do, and then whenever I'm watching a movie with you never know nothing.
Well, and that's the thing. It made me wonder, like, did I see this before? I had to have seen this before, because I distinctly remember the poster. So that's probably just like, my mind going, yeah, you've seen this, idiot. So
it was big. It was making the round. It was kind of one of those like just behind the curtain movies for a while. That was like a lot of the people making movies, TV and games in the horror genre around this time period used the image of the wheelchair in the old broken down hallway that's the only light source shining on that wheelchair. Like a lot of people use that same imagery.
Oh, it all used that a lot.
Right. It came from this film, but it's been like one of those kind of didn't quite make it to the mainstream, but it's been right behind it. And a lot of people are influenced by it, but not quite.
Yeah. So I like, it must have been, I must have watched it shortly after it's released on DVD, 2000, came out in 01. So maybe it came out on DVD like 02. And like, so for some reason, my mind just purged it. It had to have.
I don't know. I saw it. It wasn't right when it came out. I saw it probably a few years later, probably around 2005-ish, It's probably when I watched it for the
So,
first time.
Do you think it gets better or just the same on rewatches?
I mean, it's a little bit. Yeah, I mean, obviously the big twist is ruined for you. It's interesting to watch it another time or two to like see if you can spot things that don't quite match up. But not. I mean, it's really cut in a way that you really can't.
Yeah, I think all three of these are good for a rewatch. Just after you know the plot point and the ending, to go back and rewatch, just like Sixth Sense.
Right. I mean, again, it's just like it's heavily implied that David Caruso is the guy who is doing it. Because like the guy stole his girlfriend. He's constantly talking about getting another guy on the team because that guy sucks and he doesn't want him here anymore. He disappears. He calls the girlfriend again. He's the only person that talks to the girlfriend, and he went to casino school. Like, what even is that?
It's not a thing,
right? That's what I'm saying. Like, what does that mean? Like, so it's heavily implied that he fucking did all those things. But
yeah, like I said, to me, I think the giveaway is when we keep flashing back to Gordon and his wife, that their sound is so like jarring and muted and like garbled, if you will, like radio static, that like, okay, something's really wrong with that.
right. But I mean, that doesn't mean that he did anything.
See, I said originally, I said like, okay, I really felt like he killed his wife and kid because they kept focusing on that boiling pot.
I guess, but I mean, he called her later on.
Well, who knows if that really happened in his head. So
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Do you want to do your highlights first?
Sure.
Okay.
I want to say just the atmosphere that this movie builds is great. I mean, it's just kind of like it's a big spooky building. I mean, it is filmed like on site at a big spooky building. It just like if you've ever been in an old abandoned insane asylum, like it's spooky. Like even if you're there during the day,
yeah,
it's still unsettling. Knowing the things that happen there. I mean, yeah, just the big building itself. The history of the building when they're talking about things that are happening in it, things that they did, the different patients and stuff. It's interesting. It's just a fun kind of setting. I mean, that's really the only setting. There's really no other scene. I mean, there's a couple scenes that are like, outside of it, but not really.
Right.
So you get one scene of Gordon sitting in his truck, like looking at his family, and then you get like one scene of David Caruso sitting at a bar, which is like literally shown for 2 seconds, and that's it.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones that are not in or around the asylum.
Right. And the two are like, essentially, here's our waterboarding room. Water therapy by drowning people to sanity.
Well, yeah, they did a lot of that weird shit. But that's again, I thought it was interesting when he actually went through a whole I don't know. I don't think the story he told was true or not, but he was talking about the satanic panic syndrome, which is like literally false memories implanted in children. Like all of that satanic panic shit. That's what it was.
Right.
They had, I mean, and they still do it today, which is fucked up. Like, it's like, that's why, cops get in trouble for like leading witnesses, and like forcing confessions, because you can do that. You can literally break someone mentally and inject whatever you want them to say in their head, and they will fucking believe it.
Right. Are you sure you didn't, drink the blood of someone? Well,
I mean, like an adult, it's hard to do. That's like CIA level shit when you can do it to an adult, but like a child is easy to do it to. And again, like people with, like lower intelligence or childlike intelligence, that's what they do. Like that's what they did with the West Memphis 3. That's what they did to that one guy, the Making a Murderer guy. I'm pretty sure the actual dude did it. But like the kid that they, forced into a confession, I'm pretty sure he was not involved. But they like forced him to, because, he was a little, challenged, right?
Yeah.
So they could like literally force him to do it. But again, it's messed up, but it's interesting to see somebody like go through the whole process. They usually don't explain all that. They usually just say, oh yeah, it was all made up, but they don't like explain to you like it wasn't made up by the children.
Right.
It was made up by the adults that forced the children to say that shit. And then the even though the adults put it in their heads, then they believe it themselves. It's so like they literally hypnotize everybody in the room. It's fucked up.
Oh, it is.
Anyway, and then like the session tapes themselves are pretty good. Like the sound is just fucked up enough to make it unsettling,
right,
and weird. But it's like it's interesting, like the different sessions. They're kept trying to talk to Simon so they can find out and make her confront what actually happened. Because this is like that happened to her as a child, and she's like 30 something years old. So she still hasn't faced it.
right.
And so that the guy's like trying to get her to face it and trying to talk to Simon to see because Simon holds those memories. And so they're like trying to get Simon to like let her understand. It was an interesting session and tapes.
Right.
9 of them.
Ooh.
It's like the movie. That's all I got.
Yeah, for me, you talk about the big building and stuff like that. And the writer / director also stated that this was inspired by The Shining, because they have the day title cards in there, and you have the slow descension in the madness and kind of the hints and glimpses of it kind of along the way. So yeah, atmospherically, yeah, it was good. And I think it was 15-ish years later that they're able to use the actual building, and that has to be creepy in itself, right?
Yeah, especially if it was real asbestos.
Correct. It probably was.
I highly doubt it, because that's hazard stuff, and they wouldn't force them to do that. But
not in the part of the building they're in, but other parts, it's quite possible.
Well, I'm sure there was at one time. Sure, yes. Hopefully, they removed it before that.
Yeah. And you talk about the satanic panic, stuff like that. They put real stories like that Mary, that idea of being, raped like 17 different people in the forest and all that shit, was someone's real story. And that's the most terrifying part of it all, is like you said, the satanic panic was real and people really fucking did it.
Yeah, and they'd always do that stuff. Like it was like, oh yeah, they murdered and ate all these babies, and you're like, what?
Right.
And you're like, okay, well, how come like no babies were ever listed missing? And then they're like, oh, that's because they bred them specifically for that purpose. Like, what? Like, how do you have a group of people that keep getting pregnant and the babies keep disappearing? Like, somebody would fucking notice, dude. Like, what? Like, again, like these stories don't make any sense as soon as you start breaking them down. But these people believe this shit.
Yeah.
And it's sorry that it's progressed into like the modern age. It never went away.
Right.
It just like keeps going in the background, but there's still these like crazy people that still believe all this shit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of like, I'm sorry, I don't want to get into religion, but there's a lot of like fundamentalist people that still believe this stuff. That still believe it's real. And that's why the whole QAnon thing was able to like get a hold when it did. And that's why there's the whole thing of like they're eating babies. It's literally a direct connection between the satanic panic and QAnon. It's a direct line.
Yep.
I don't want to get too political, but yeah.
No, like I said, it's interesting to hear the real stories being brought up into the movie. So that, like I said, that adds just that next level of it, right, to the atmosphere, to the story, to the session tapes. And I think the session tapes were good, that you can tell these are different people doing the voices. It wasn't like the little English girl doing the old man's voice. Billy Crackett, I died in my chair. Conjuring 2 bullshit.
Right.
Yeah, and the ending, it's a bad ending. Like, Gordon snapped, killed everyone, and now what?
Yeah, Gordon snapped, killed everyone. We realized that like half the shit that we just watched is just in his head.
Mm-hmm.
And like who knows what the fuck was really happening or not. We get a couple of flashbacks that show us like approximately when they died. But there's like a lot of stuff happened after that. You're like, all of that was fake? Like, apparently.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I'll go ahead and roll into my low points. Mullets.
Mullet. There's like one.
Well, it feels like there's multiple just because it's a mullet.
Wow.
You know, the mullet man, the nephew, and then like, you know, Gordon and him, like when they're walking around the building, like there could be asbestos in this crumbling wall and this here, and none of them are wearing masks. None of them are being protective. Even nephew's going there, like, you don't have to wear a mask, it's fine. I'd be wearing a mask, period.
Well, I mean, yeah, they tell them when to do it. I mean, again, like if you've been doing it for as long as you have, like, you know, the risk is never going to be zero.
Correct. But also, I'm sorry. For only having a week, I know half of it's made up. They're not working very hard. They still have daylight when they call it a day. Like, yep, we taped everything up. Yep, that's call it a day. All right. You know, just because they don't really show a lot of exploration, it just feels like they don't seem to be having like a get up to get shit done.
It's okay. So your ideal version of this movie would be 30 minutes longer of them just doing the work.
Yeah.
Okay. Point noted.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you don't call it an end of a workday when it's still daylight out.
Dear God, this is America. What are you talking about? What do you think? This is a fucking gulag?
Well,
like they're supposed to work themselves to the bone every day?
I'm just saying, if they know, like, two of them know this is to save the business, I feel like they would have been working harder. That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, they said they had it at Monday. You don't start getting crazy until you get to the end of the day, Friday, and you see you still got a bunch of shit to do, and you got to work it through the whole weekend. I've been there. I'm sure you've been there. Everybody's been there.
Yeah. And I think the twist would have been, I don't want to say better, but if it's, you know, it's heavily implied that maybe Simon is Gordon and something like that. Like the tape subplot would have made more sense if it tied directly to Gordon.
Well, it was a woman. So you're saying one of the multiple personalities somehow forced itself into its own body, like made itself corporal, and became a person?
I'm just saying it'd been interesting if maybe it wasn't Simon, or, you know, Simon was someone else, or just it was a different story. But like, if it'd been better if the last voice we hear, or we find out it was Gordon on the session 9 tape, because that subplot does nothing.
Well, that's the thing. If you hear his voice, because he has like a kind of an accent.
Oh yeah.
So if you heard his voice, you would know immediately that it's him, and then it would ruin the entire film.
I'm just saying, like, after we wrap up everything, after it's revealed that it's Gordon, we hear his voice. And I also will say that the doctor voice in the session tapes sounded like David Caruso. I was convinced it was David Caruso doing the doctor's voice on those tapes.
Oh.
So, and then obviously Casino College.
Casino
AKA
school.
Going to play the slots. I'm leaving Massachusetts, going to Florida to play some slot machines. Okay. That's cool. That's all I got. How about you?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of open questions. You know, maybe too many. Like, again, they give you a little bit more information. I still enjoyed it for what it was, but like, there's a lot of open stuff. You know, again, I think that the main question is, like, you know, who was a patient there? Was anyone a patient there? Were all of them patients there? I mean, I doubt the nephew was, but like the rest of them could have been. We don't know.
I think that made a better story too, quite honestly.
Yeah. And they're just, there's a lot of intentional misdirection, like showing you that, you know, it couldn't be this person, it couldn't be that person. It doesn't really show you that it's one of them. It just shows you that things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it.
That's it. All right. So what are our out ofs this week?
I just went with Stunning Revelations because you know, all of these movies have the same, you know, stunning revelations in all of them. So.
Right. The last essentially 15 minutes left, we get the big reveal, then we get a little bit of backstory to be able to fill in the gaps, and we call it.
Right.
So do you want me to go first for my number of stunning revelations out of 10?
Yes.
Um, yeah, like I said, I don't feel like I need to watch this movie again after maybe watching it now twice. It is an interesting piece. It does almost feel like it could be an X-Files episode, like the way it's written in that, the sci-fi
You're
plot.
obsessed with X-Files lately.
I
Trying to
know.
put every single movie into the X-Files.
Hey, some of them were X-Files episodes,
I
but they
mean,
got turned into a movie.
technically every horror movie ever made could be made into an X-Files episode. Okay, there you go.
Okay. That all being said, I will give this a 6 stunning revelations out of 10. How about you?
I like this movie. Again, I there's the David Caruso movies I thought were mostly good. And I know a lot of people, shit on poor David Caruso, and his attitude problem doesn't help much. But poor David Caruso.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I like this movie a lot, so I give it 7.5 stunning revelations out of 10.
7.5. All right. So
then we go to Shutter Island. Big names.
all big names.
All big names in Shutter Island. We're talking Nardo, we're talking Ruffalo, we're talking Ben Kingsley, directed by the Scorsese. I mean, big
Elias
names. What?
Elias Kotas, Casey Jones.
Well, Casey Jones is in it for like maybe 5 seconds.
Rorschach.
Buffalo Bill.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this movie.
Yes. So yeah, essentially we are introduced to the movie of 2 U.S. Marshals going to Shutter Island, which is an insane asylum on the island, and this is slightly after World War II. So like,
Yeah, I think it's like mid to late 50s.
yeah, I was gonna say I was thinking like 54. I think they said the date somewhere in there. But anyway, so we have 2 guys who have never been partners, Mark Ruffalo and Leonardo DiCaprio, going there and they're investigating
You could just shorten it to Nardo. Everybody will know who you're talking about.
All right. So going there to investigate the idea of a missing patient, the 67th patient, essentially. And they're
Not yet.
Well, 66.
The person that is missing is a normal patient.
Yes.
They don't find out the mystery of that stuff until later.
Yeah. So, they're kind of, Ben Kingsley is, the head of the facility, right? And they're being introduced and doing like, sessions and talking to, staff, to people that are there, the patients that are there, and trying to figure out what's going on there, like where this person could possibly go, because there's literally no place to go. It's an island. And they're like, oh, well, where's her doctor? Oh, well, he's on vacation. Well, isn't that convenient? Right? Like, oh, well, let's not worry about that. And as Leo and Ruffalo, start to kind of keep going around the island, talk to more patients, they're talking like, okay, what was this woman like? What was her doctor like? And Leo's really obsessed to kind of figuring it out. They're like, oh, he's very kind, he's good in the eyes, all this stuff. And they're staying there too, which is terrifying in a way to be on the case and staying there. And kind of just going,
the storm, there's a really bad storm that prevents them from leaving.
Yeah. So yeah, they said they're trapped there now with them too, and like, oh, here's this lighthouse. We can't go to the lighthouse. All this stuff. So Leo starts like investigating around the islands, like, maybe she went to the lighthouse, or maybe she scaled down these cliffs because she's watching as Ruffalo is there, and like he just kind of disappears. Well, his cigarette butt's there, and he climbs down the face of the cliff to find like a cove that's there. And essentially he doesn't find her.
No, well, there's a part in between where they basically say, "Oh, we found her," and they go and interview her. because she's like, she doesn't know that she's in a mental hospital, so she
Right.
talks like she's in her house, and all the other patients are her neighbors and stuff.
Mhm.
But anyway, so they talk to her, and they kind of, Nardo comes to the conclusion that it's like she doesn't sound like that's actually her.
Right. Well, because she said they were barefoot, and she's out in the storm, like, she's got to be dead, and her feet looked fine, healthy, not roughed up.
Right. Yeah. She would that. So he decides that there's more to it, and then that's when he goes into the cave, and then he finds a woman there, and that woman is the real patient, supposedly.
Right. Well, yeah, that's up for debate. And everything like that. So he's like, yeah, I just have to get away. He's like, how well do you know the people here? How well do you know your partner? He's like, oh, we haven't worked the case yet together. Don't you find that weird? Huh. What about headaches? Are you getting headaches? Are they giving you medication? Are you rolling your own cigarettes? It's like, no, they're giving me medicine because I keep getting migraines. And the cigarettes are being handed to me. Like, well, don't do that. Don't take that shit, right? Because once you're here and they think you're here, they're going to trap you here, essentially. Don't do that. And I'd say about halfway through the movie, he starts wearing out of his typical U.S. Marshal suit that he's doing into a patient's jumpsuit.
No, they're wearing orderly suits.
Orderly. Well, close.
The patients are gray.
Yeah, I guess their stuff is white. And he's like, okay, his partner just kind of then disappears for 40 minutes of the movie after he vanishes off the cliff. And and they're trying to talk about this stuff. And, throughout the movie, we're getting glimpses of, Leo's wife, and it's made by Michelle Williams is her name, right?
Who?
His wife.
Well, I don't know.
Eddie Brock's girlfriend from the Venom movies. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That does narrow it down.
Yeah. And he's just trying to get off the island. He costs poor Max von what's his name?
Seidel,
yeah. And hey, I'm getting out of here. He kind of gives him like an injection, puts him to sleep, and he realizes he can't escape. He makes his way to the lighthouse, and he gets brought in, and then essentially, wakes up in his room, and everyone's going, yeah, you never had a partner here at all. There's a lot more to it than this. He's like, I want out, and goes to the main guy's office. He's like, this is not right. I know who I am, what's going on here. And he's like, no, Teddy, you are a patient here. You are that mysterious 67th patient he's saying that was kept being here. It's you. He's like, no. It's like, yeah, this is kind of like our last hurrah before we lobotomize you. It's been 2 years since you did this most heinous act. And then in walks in his partner, Mark Ruffalo. He's like, yeah, I'm your doctor. This is what we're doing here. And he's like, no, this isn't real. I have all these memories. I have this gun. Like, that gun is made out of, like, what they say it was, like paper mache, or it was like a kid's toy.
It's just a toy, yeah.
Just a toy. And he's like, because he envisages shooting Ben Kingsley multiple times, like, and then flashes back, like, nope, he's fine. The gun crumbles. And he's like, we need to remember who you are. The woman you're looking for, that you're making, it was, like an anagram of your wife's name. And then your Teddy is an anagram of your real name. And, you're really smart. You were a U.S. Marshal, but then you came home and found that your wife had drowned your kids and you killed her. So we get kind of a flashback of that scene. And yeah, he does kill her. And he's like, huh. He's like, so, tomorrow morning, we've tried this before. If this is your last chance, we have people here. And if you're okay, we don't have to lobotomize you. But if you revert back, sorry, we can't. And he wakes up the next morning, and Ruffalo goes over. He's like, hey, do you remember me? And he's like, hey, partner, we gotta do this. We gotta find out what's going on here. And he's like, as they're coming to take him, he's like, it's better to, die a hero than live as a monster, essentially. Something like that, right?
Well, die as yourself.
Yeah.
or
yeah. Right. That's that's the movie as a whole. I mean, this movie was, and I'd say still is, highly, highly talked about.
I haven't heard anybody talk about it since it came out.
I mean, when it came out, though, it was everyone was talking about it because it's
sure.
Scorsese.
Scorsese.
Yeah, at his essentially horror adjunct movie. And I honestly don't recall the first time I watched it. It might have been like when it came out to rent on DVD. It probably was right about there, probably like 2011. And I thought it was a fantastic movie. It was really well made with, like I said, the astounding cast, and atmospherically, yeah, you're on that trip with Leo the entire way. What was your first thoughts?
First thoughts? I don't know. I mean, I thought it was a good movie. I like the open questions to it. I like the kind of twist to it. It was well made. Well, it was fun.
Yeah, on rewatches, do you catch anything new that you missed the first couple of times?
No, I mean, you really only have to watch this movie twice, right? The first time to know what the twist is, the second time just to see the interesting things. But I mean, we're literally seeing it from Nardo's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's again, there's a lot of things that are intentionally wrong, intentionally misdirecting you.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things there. Are you gonna tell me that the first time you watched this, you knew what was happening the whole time?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all. Yeah, it's a solid entry, and like I said, I watch other people's videos and lists, and it still stays up there as most of like the biggest what the fuck moments for the protagonist, right? Identities on this list as well of that type of thing. So I think Martin does a great job. I'll do my highlights first. As we said before, it is a movie that you do have to watch twice. Highly recommended to watch it twice, and you won't regret it, because you watch it the first time and you go back and watch it, you go, okay, how much of this is real, right? Because he's the unreliable narrator, right? He has different things already in his head. He sees things differently. We get that in the last 15, 20 minutes of the reveal of the movie. And you go, okay, how much of this is real? Don't know. And that's an interesting way to look at it, right? So I do like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like the whole storm thing. Like, was there really a storm?
Probably not.
Or did he think there was? Or did they tell him there was, and he just, hallucinated it? I mean, we don't know.
Right. It's entirely possible, it could have been a little bit of rain, but who knows? The acting from everyone was great. We talk about this a lot, that you could have great actors and bad directors, and they turn out to make a shit movie, right? And we go, okay, these people can do better. We just, if you have a bad director, it makes the world of difference. And you have great actors and a great director, so it makes a really cohesive, well put together movie. And the question of the end is, I don't know. I didn't research what other people thought. I want to hear your thoughts too. But does he know at the end? Is he just going, okay, the treatment worked, and I know I did. I don't want to live myself, so lobotomize me? Or did he really regress back to the U.S. Marshal?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. What do you think?
No, I think he was healed this time.
Yeah.
And I think that he just, he realizing that he would have to live the rest of his life with this knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's like, I would rather just, again, I wouldn't want to be lobotomized, because lobotomy is like, maybe you're trapped in your own mind.
Yep.
Right. So now it's like you can't communicate, you can't do normal things anymore, and now you're still trapped in your own head. Like, nobody really knows what happens to you when you're lobotomized. They just know that it's easier for like staff to deal with, sure.
Right.
But we don't know what's actually happening in their brain. Again, you might be stuck in there,
mm-hmm.
and then you're even worse, because now you're worse off. So kill me, okay, like I could be on board with that, but like lobotomize me, no. I would rather you just kill me.
Yeah, I agree, because I think it's that line he says that he's like, okay, yeah, I am cured, I know it, but you know what? I don't want to do this.
Right.
So, like I said, I appreciate that. So, that's what I got. How about you?
Yeah, I mean the cast is great. Obviously, I mean we already named all the names. I mean, I think this is like the first thing after The Watchmen that Jackie Earle Haley did. You know, again, that was really. I mean, I know he was around before that, but that's really the first thing I, noticed him in.
I also noticed him in Nightmare on Elm Street, and I stopped noticing.
Well, Nightmare on Elm Street was after all this. That was he bet big on that. That was like that was going to be his career moving forward, and it just bombed horribly. I don't think he did necessarily a bad job. I just think it was just a shitty movie in general.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I guess spoilers for when we get there. But yeah, it just wasn't a good movie, and he rolled big dice on that, and I think he failed. He's still around, he's still in stuff, but I think he was hoping that was going to be his big.
Yep.
Retirement
role.
Robert Englund role. Yeah, like the role you can do for the rest of your life. And yeah, it did not work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I do like him and stuff, but this was like the first thing after The Watchmen that I saw him in. And I thought he was like, oh yeah, he's gonna be coming up. Like I thought he was gonna be one of the next big things. But almost.
Yeah.
Near miss, I guess. But yeah, Buffalo Bill's in it. It really doesn't show up until like almost the end of the movie, even though he was like, I think like the head of security. I don't know why he wasn't in the beginning.
I mean, he almost looked like a Nazi. I'm just throwing it out there.
Well, it's 1950s like police and correctional officer uniforms. That's what they look like. They're not Nazi uniforms. They're just that's the cut of the uniforms that they used back then. I mean, the war flashbacks I thought were pretty interesting. I mean, because like, one of the things that really made him a broken person before this was he was present at the liberation of Dachau, which is one of the concentration camps, which fucked with his head. And if you listen to him talking like throughout the movie, they don't know if any of this stuff actually happened, because a lot of the stuff that he told them about the liberation of Dachau was not true.
Mm-hmm.
So like, but he was saying like, yeah, we don't think he witnessed any of the guards actually getting killed. So like a lot of this, so like who knows what happened and what didn't happen. Obviously something did, because it obviously is floating in his mind, but a lot of it, his brain is just making up shit for him to deal with life. So we don't know what's real and what's not.
I mean,
but
maybe he did start the shoot of everyone there. You don't know.
Well, I highly doubt it, because there's people there that would hold you accountable for doing that. There's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
But they were interesting nonetheless. I mean, the whole concept of it, the mystery of it, is just, it's a fun watch, especially the first time. And yeah, like I said, the twist at the end is again, the first time you're watching it, you're like, what?
Right.
But it's good time. Yeah, I'll roll into my low points here. So, when the storm is going on and they're outside, they get this like goofy shaky cam thing going on. It's completely unnecessary. Like, we see that trees are blowing down and wind is everywhere. We don't need the camera to wiggle. Like, there's no reason for that. I don't understand why everybody goes with the shaky cam. Like, if it's an earthquake, okay, I can understand a shaky cam, but like, it's a fucking storm.
Yep.
It's not necessary. Yeah, Dachau is a bad place. Like, that sucks. Most movies, when they're talking about concentration camps, usually make up a fake one simply to not link it to an existing thing.
Where people can look up historical facts. Yeah.
Right. They usually make it up. Like App Pupil would be a good example. Like,
right. He
was at a non-existent concentration camp. I mean, obviously, the things that they did were very, very real, but they don't name a name so that you can't, like, whatever.
Right.
But this one, they actually name the name, and like, it's a for real thing. I mean, the cliffs and the ocean, like, that's terrifying. I don't know why. Like, I was like, they like lost track of him. Like the fucking doctor just like left him there.
Yep.
And he was like like crawling up and down these fucking cliffs and shit. Like that's extremely dangerous. Like, what
if
the
he
fuck?
dies, he dies.
Right, I guess. But like, you think they would be watching him? Like,
Yeah.
what the hell are you guys doing? Letting him climb on cliffs and shit. But then again, who knows? He might not have even done it.
He probably just looked at the cigarette on the ledge there and go, "Oh shit!" And then he did it.
Yeah,
and then,
he might have been like, doing the curly shuffle on the ground. We don't fucking know what he was doing.
right.
But I was just thinking of like, why would they let him crawl on these fucking cliffs? And they let him knock out the guard. We know that that's true because the doctor actually asked him, did you hurt him? Which is messed up. You put a guy there to guard the place. Like, why did you just leave it open then?
Yeah.
It would have been the same thing. Yeah, I mean the real story of like what actually happened, like that's terrifying. If you come home and your wife has drowned your children in a lake, and then is like obviously fucking broken to the point where she's like, "Oh yeah, they're okay. We'll just wash them up and just put them at the table. They'll be our little dolls." What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, yeah, I understand why he shot her. Like, you are fucked up.
Yeah.
But him being in law enforcement and knowing that she like broke mentally, he knows that she's not gonna like be punished for her crime. She's gonna go to a mental hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, in the 50s is probably worse. But in his mind, maybe he was like, "Oh no, you need to like, do time for what you did."
Right.
Anyway, but essentially it broke him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I guess the big question is did he regress, right? I mean, I think he did, but I guess it's an open question.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Working and living on the island as your job sounds awful.
Well, I'm sure they have like shifts. You'll be like, a week on, a week off or something.
Maybe, but I still would not want to do that. you know.
I mean, no, I would not.
I know this is the point of the movie, but it seems like an awful lot of work to go through for one guy.
Well, this is like, again, they're trying to, again, what he was talking about, the old school versus the new school.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's why they set it at this time period. Like, this is the time period where the old school is like, yeah, just fucking lobotomize these dangerous
take
people.
out a piece of the brain. That's
right,
fine.
just fucking lobotomize them. Then they become nobody's problem, and then it's, we don't have to have like these lockdown, criminally insane, crazy places. We could just literally put them in anywhere, and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
And it's like the new school of like, no, let's not lobotomize people. Let's actually try to like fix them.
They have to face their trauma or what they did to be able to break free.
Right. It's like the I mean, obviously the Freud was out by this point, but they're trying to follow like that line of psychiatry versus the whole just fucking fuck them up.
But I mean, that I still a lot of people involved there for one guy. If those patients really patients, like talking about like calling Mark Ruffalo handsome because that's her doctor, like somebody's gonna fucking break if they are real. Like it just seems like a lot of work to get everyone there to do it. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, most of it was like staff, like the patient that supposedly escaped and then came back. Like that was one of the nurses.
Yeah.
So there was really only like a couple of people that were actually patients.
Right.
That they interviewed, but then they were pretty much assholes anyway. So.
Yeah, like I said, it's just I think it was a big ask, but I'm not saying you should shoot your wife. Not saying that at all. But I'm not saying that his crimes is the most unimaginable thing possible for him to have done. The way they kept stating that, like, he did the unimaginable, right? Like, he broke.
I mean, I think everybody understands why he did that.
Yes.
I think they're trying to, like, make him realize, like, yeah, you did it, and it's okay to, like, survive that.
Yeah. But like, God, like and it's unfortunate. You hear of people drowning their own kids. We just had that, whoever that chick was, a couple years ago, right? 10 years ago.
Well, yeah, there's been several of them, but yeah.
You know, and just like, it's like that scene was probably like one of the best scenes with just the two people, just because there's a lot of emotion there, and like her going through, Michelle Williams going through, like, yeah, they're dead. Let's just dress them up. It's their birthday, blah blah blah, and we'll start over. Everything will be fine. Well, no, it won't. I mean, even if he didn't mentally break at that point in time, I think watching her go to prison or go to an asylum would have broken him too. If he was already, it seemed like he was on the edge. If he really was in World War II, which, you know, wars mess up people flat out. And who knows what he did as a U.S. Marshal. They said he's really intelligent, you know, so you don't know. That's about all I got for my low points. So, why don't you go first? How many stunning revelations out of 10 do you give this movie?
I mean, it is a really good movie. I wouldn't consider it among my like favorite movies. But I'll give it 8.75.
Yeah, like I said, it's a strong movie. It's a strong contender. It's interesting to see people doing psychological thrillers like Martin Scorsese, which you wouldn't think he would do one, honestly, the way he talks about some things.
Well, he's got to take a break from gangster crime at some point.
Clearly not. So, like I said, it's a strong movie. You have to watch, like I said, twice. You know, it's a long movie, but watch it twice. That's all, and they're good to go. It's not a rewatchable thing that you have to see every year, right? It's like the cinema movie. I will give this 8.5 stun revelations out of 10.
All right. So now we move on to The Endless from 2018. I never heard of this movie. I don't know where you found it.
I found it. You found it.
I didn't. I have no idea what this movie is.
Okay. Huh. Maybe it was on our list of things that are like it.
Well, it was originally because at some point we're gonna do time loops. It was originally on that list. Why it ended up in this list, I do not know. Because I didn't know. I don't, like I said, I don't know what this is. I'm like, oh, maybe it follows the same pattern. Okay. Yeah.
It does not.
It does not. No, it doesn't at all. And that's how I was like, why was this on the fucking list? What is this?
I don't remember.
Again, I don't know how it ended up there. And like, and I was looking, I was like, is it still in the other place too? It was. It was still on the time loop list too. So it was in both places. I don't know how it ended up on there, but it did. But anyway, I mean, I'm gonna kind of make this one quick. There's a lot of goofy things that happen in the middle, but it's really not relevant. Most of it is not relevant in any way. Once you understand what is like happening, the rest of it is pointless.
Mm-hmm.
There's one kind of big plot hole that I see. I don't know if you saw the same one. I mean, we'll get there eventually, but essentially it's this. Okay, there's two brothers who are like living in the bottom of the barrel, right? They're like, you know, living in a tiny little apartment with like, you know, mattresses on the floor, eating ramen. Like, they have a cleaning job that they do. They're barely scraping by. And they had apparently escaped from as they describe it, a UFO death cult 10 years before.
Right.
Like literally they were on the news and everything, like escape death cult. I don't know how they can be on the news escaping a death cult and then they don't like talk to the fucking death cult. Like, yeah, I'm like, what? That doesn't make any sense to me. But
Mhm.
Yeah, so essentially, they know that they're in this death cult. They've been in deprogramming for the last 10 years, but the younger brother still like cannot get over like like we had it good at that place. Like we ate good food. Like I remember having fun there. Like our life sucks now.
Right.
Like we eat ramen, like there's no we can't meet women or talk to women, like we live in a shithole, like we don't have enough money to do anything. Like this sucks. I want to go back. And he's like, well, no, we're not fucking going back. He's like, all right, well, we'll just go back to visit. Can we go back to visit? And so the brother initially says no, and then realizes that, the younger brother's going to go anyway. So he decides to go with him to make sure he can like watch him when he's there.
Hmm.
So we drive out to the death cult. And it's just like a bunch of, kind of younger hipster people, like, living kind of like a weird commune, kind of like, I guess, polygamous, like world, right? That's really all it seems to be. And they have a lot of beer.
Oh, because they make it.
Yeah, they make I'm just saying, they have a lot of beer. They seem to have good food. Like everybody just kind of does what they want. Like there's not really like any jobs. They just, again, it seems nice. The one dude is like still dead set against it. Like there's a lot of things you don't know. Like they castrate you, and there's all this weird shit. And as it goes along, there's weird stuff. Like they play tug of war with like something in the woods
That goes into the sky.
yeah, that goes into the sky that we don't see. Like, okay, that's like that. What is that? He's like, oh, it's just a guy on a ladder. Like, no,
No.
the ladder can't pull that hard. Like, it's not possible. Like, so again, there's a lot of things we don't know. But essentially, he's like, okay, we got to go. And then the little brother's like, no, we got to stay because he's got a crush on like one of the girls. And then we get a kind of a hint as what's coming where he goes, she's like 40. It's like, what do you mean? She looks like she's like in her 20s. You're like, yeah, but she was in her 20s when we were here
10 years ago.
10 years ago. So like, she's got to be in her 40s. Like they must be eating really good food or something because they all look just as young as they did when we were here last time. Which is kind of a big hint. Anyway, they're kind of like comes this big kind of breakdown where we realize that no, they weren't actually castrated. That was something that he made up. I guess when he left the death cult, he made up all those stories to make them look bad. So they've been kind of struggling with that. Like he said, it's hard for us to sell our beer because, people think that we're this death cult and they think we're like crazy, weird people. They think they're Heaven's Gate people. They actually say that.
I personally think that hipsters like, oh, there's a UFO death cult brewery. Yeah, I'm going to that.
Yeah, exactly. It would probably be a good thing. You probably sell a lot. But anyway, but this is what they have this kind of like thing where he's like, I don't care. I forgive you anyway. And then they like, weird things start happening. And then they get like, like a kind of like this dust devil kind of like gives the older brother a bunch of like Polaroid photos. And they end up being this like lake. And he's like, okay, well, if it gave this to you, then that's where you need to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so they go there and he's like, he tells them you have to go jump in the water, dive all the way to the bottom, pick up what you find there and then bring it back. And they bring back it's like a little tackle box he finds filled with rocks. And they bring it back and there's like a tape inside of it.
Yep.
And they put in the tape and it's basically them like back in the old days, like dressing and acting like Mormons, like trying to convert people to their church. But it seems to be like they were like Mormon people. I don't know. It doesn't fit for them to be part of that cult. I don't know what that was supposed to mean.
It seems like they were parodying the cult to just tarnish their name, but that's why they got really upset.
Yeah, it's a weird scene. I guess we don't really get enough background to know why it's so like insulting or anything. Like, and everybody storms off all upset. And I was like, we don't really understand why. Anyway, and then at this point is where the actual point of the film happens, to where the one brother kind of storms off like, oh, I'm going to go leave, but the car won't start. So then he gets kind of lost in the woods and he meets up with the guy who basically gives him the exposition of what's happening. Everybody's stuck in their own time loop.
Yes.
And the time loops are of all different lengths and areas. Like you can't, once you're stuck in the time loop, you can't leave the area that you're locked in, which is like, you can tell there's like these little posts around. And you can't leave your area, and you can't do anything other than relive the time loop. The only way to stop it is to kill yourself, which starts the time loop again anyway, but at least it's something different.
Correct. So they're trying to find unique ways to kill themselves.
Right. So yeah, the one guy is like very angry that he's stuck in the time loop, and he just keeps trying to find better ways to kill himself. But he knows that they're stuck in time loops, and he knows that there's other time loop people out there, but he can't leave his loop because he's not allowed to.
Right.
So he said, well, if you're not stuck in a loop yet, you can still travel freely around.
Yeah.
And so since the brother is not in a time loop, he's like, I'll give you a map to get you out of here. But you have to go get me a gun from this other time loop people. So he goes and deals with other, tweaker drug people. Like the one guy's like trying to get sober, and is apparently stuck in a loop trying to get sober for, however long their loop is. We don't know. And he gets a gun from them, brings it back so the guy can kill himself, and he gives them the map. And the other brother now, he decides to go looking for him. He finds a tent of a guy like literally running like from portal to portal. His loop is like, I don't know, 5 seconds long.
Yeah, it's 5 seconds.
Yeah. So it's 5 seconds long. He sees that, he goes, oh, that's weird. And so then like the guy runs directly at him one time and then just explodes.
Yep.
And then they meet up. Now, here's where the big fucking plot hole is.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Do you want me to? I'll talk about it. Whatever. I'll talk about it right now. When they meet up, the younger brother talks to him as if he fully understands the time loops.
Yep.
Now, he was never explained about the time loops. The only thing, he saw the guy running in his 5-second loop, and that was it. That was the only evidence or explanation that he had.
Hey, there's a physics equation on the board, sir. All right.
No, he wasn't even. Yeah, but he wasn't even the guy who saw that.
No.
Like he was just like having a good old time trying to bone, the lady, right? In the death cult, and drinking and eating good food. He was never explained any of this. He goes out looking, finds this guy running back and forth in a tent, and all of a sudden now he knows all about the time loops. Like I don't know if they cut a scene out or something. But like they're talking as if they both have full knowledge of exactly what the time loops are, what their limitations are, and everything.
So
it's a huge fucking hole.
I did see that, and I did research it, and we'll get to it. The research I found. Or do you want to tell you now?
I don't. Go ahead. I just
okay. They're also in the time loop. They're in the 10-year time loop.
They're not though.
This is from like the director and writers. That's why the woman knows, like, oh, we're not be part of their loop, but you're part of the loop. And that's why he was able to know it. It's them leaving. The loop is them leaving the cult.
I call bullshit.
I agree. It's someone's plot hole.
That's a plot hole. Yeah, that's a plot hole, and they're trying to make a cop out because that doesn't make any sense. That defeats the entire purpose of the film. Then.
Yes.
Because if that's the case, then their time loop would encompass the entire city that they lived in.
Mm-hmm.
That's impossible.
I'm just saying that's what the research.
I'm just saying you're full. The guy, I'm saying not you. I'm just saying these people are full of shit. You fucking had a huge fucking plot hole. I don't know if you missed the scene or if you thought that him watching the guy running in a tent was supposed to explain everything. But yeah, that's because I was sitting there. I'm like, did I miss something? Like, was there a scene? Because I was getting distracted at this point. Because I'm, spoiler, I'm not a huge fan of this movie. And I was just like, did I fucking miss something? Like, how does he know all this? Like, the other dude barely knows because the guy told him. But he didn't tell him the whole story.
Correct.
And again, it still doesn't make any sense because the other people can't enter his bubble.
We'll get to that.
Whatever, dude.
Yeah.
It's fucking stupid. Anyway, so so they get together. They finally they talk about the loop. They both decide, eventually that they're going to leave. And then they finally get in their car and they drive away as like the 10-year loop is happening, which is like, essentially like the nothing.
Oh, it's chasing them down.
Yeah, it's like chasing them. The world is getting destroyed behind them as they're trying to leave the loop. And then they come out of the loop bubble and they go back into their, normal world. And then
they Thelma and Louise it out of the bubble.
Right. And then everything is normal around him, and then it's fine.
Mm-hmm. The end.
The end.
Yeah. I, once again, know you how this ended up on the list for this one. I don't know. I cannot recall. I must be in a different time bubble.
I was to say, because I was like, I had the idea for the episode. I was like, because I knew Session 9 and Shutter Island would both be good for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking of a third one. And how this third one got on the list, I don't know.
No idea.
I don't know either. But yeah, kind of sort of low budget, I would say.
Except it was what's really interesting is the guys that wrote and directed this movie, which is a second part of a trilogy, a loose trilogy, wrote and directed episodes of Loki. So they had this time loop idea, then went into Loki a few years later, which money versus no money is a big difference.
Yeah, well, money versus no money versus, they have like a fucking team that will point out continuity errors.
that's probably what they do.
Right, yeah. I think it would have made sense if they would have had a scene where the other brother got explained to as well.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't.
Correct. Yeah, this is indie sci-fi horror.
I'm just saying, like, okay. It's like the more I think about it, the more it's pissing me off. Because the people in the loop are fully aware that they're in a loop.
Mm-hmm.
They have full knowledge of what happened the last loop.
Mm-hmm.
So why would he want to go back without any knowledge of it being a fucking loop if he was already in the fucking loop?
Correct.
People are full of shit. People make me fucking angry when they do that shit. Oh, well, it's a very open-ended film, so we can say whatever we want. Fuck you. It pisses me. Like, this is the kind of shit I can't get around. There's some movies that just I can't get my head around. Again, I watch a lot of sci-fi shit, so like you don't have to explain it to me well enough for me to like go, oh, that's not real science. Like I understand I would never like sci-fi if that was the case. A cursory explanation is all I need. Something, as long as you like are aware of it and you put a line in or something that says, yes, we're aware that this is a potential plot hole. Here's the one line to close that plot hole. No matter how flimsy it is, I'm fine with it.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie doesn't have it. There's so many movies that just don't have it. I always go back to it. I know you're probably tired of hearing it when I talk about Signs, right? Like, there's just huge fucking plot holes that you can drive fucking express trains through, right? And they try to say, oh, no, that's the way it's supposed to be. Like, no, it's fucking not. We all know that fucking, M. Night Shyamalan does not think that far ahead.
No.
Why no one tells him this doesn't make sense? While, like, there's so much time and so many people involved that could have been like, yo, man, this doesn't make sense. Like, why don't you put a fucking line in here that explains this? Like, how does no one notice this?
Because he has the idea. He goes, here's a twist idea. What if aliens invaded and they're allergic to water?
Like, okay. I like the water part, I'm okay with. That's not the part I'm upset about.
What?
Like, again, we have a lot of like things in our water that we as humans are totally fine with.
Mm-hmm.
Like microorganisms and, whatever, micro fucking plastics and like, whatever, fluoride, all the minerals, all the shit that's in our fucking water. And whatever it is that, their version of water might be totally different, right? They might have different minerals we've never heard of, shit like that because they're fucking aliens, right? Yep. And so to them, it might be acidic. Okay. That I will explain myself away from that. I know that's a point that a lot of people complain about, but like, they're like, oh, why would they invade a planet that's, 70% water if they're allergic to water. Well, they probably didn't know they were allergic to that water.
Oh yeah.
Like, I'm sure they got water on their planet and they're fine with it. But this is different kind of water for whatever reason we don't know. Because we never got a guy to explain to us why that water was acidic. We never got that far into the invasion.
Right. But I'm saying is that with the Shyamalan is that these guys had the same twist idea and then filled in with shit.
Right. Yeah. They had the same twist idea, and they focused so hard on that twist that they literally forgot huge fucking plot holes. And then they try to like patch it up like, yeah, they meant to do that. Like, no, they fucking didn't.
It's because your plot holes are in a different time bubble than the rest of the movie.
It's like, again, when people say that kind of shit, it just pisses me off.
All right. Do you want to do your short highlights first?
Sure. I do enjoy time loops, right? Time loops are fun. These time loops are very inconsistent with what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. But okay, right? What the entity is, right? We don't know what it is. It could be an alien, it could be a other dimensional being, it could be some kind
Cthulhu.
of it could be anything. Yeah, it could be anything. It's interesting. The mystery of it is interesting, right? How it communicates, the messages themselves, right? Something is communicating with them, right?
Polaroids of them standing out in the field, and there's the picture.
Right. Yeah. Like, again, that's interesting, right? Like old beat up old tapes that have, stuff that they've never seen before and shit. Like, who knows? Right? That's interesting. Those are interesting things. That's it. That's all I get.
I completely agree. It's like aliens ?
Right.
Maybe. And it's, hey, look, time loops again. That's my same two highlights. I like time loops when they're done well. Every sci-fi show has one time loop episode.
They do.
Every single one.
They always do.
And I think time loops are hard to pull off well.
Well, they're hard to pull off without being stupid and cheesy.
Correct. So, that's the end of my list for the highlights. I'll go with low points. Obviously, UFO Death Cult.
That's also my number one.
CGI Fire.
That is literally my second one.
Oh boy, number 3.
Literally, it says UFO Death Cult, CGI Fire. Those are 1 and 2.
Is number 3 acting?
No.
Okay.
Number 3 is my breakdown of complaining about the younger brother knowing things that he shouldn't fucking know.
Okay. Okay. So we talk about loopholes, plot holes, stuff like that, right? What the guy who's helping his friend detox or get sober, right, proves that even when the house is set on fire, even when something else is there, the objects are also in that time loop. So please explain to me how a gun from one time loop can go into someone else's time loop and not get reset.
How can a guy's body be in his own time loop?
Correct.
None of that. There's so many, like I said, it's so inconsistent. Like, this shit doesn't make any sense. You're not even following your own rules.
Mm-hmm. Now, I'd also argue when the brother is seeing the guy in that 5-second time loop, the clock moves backwards too. He was standing next to the fucking clock. Therefore, in that time loop.
Because they do say that if you are in the time loop for the entirety of a loop, that you are then part of that same loop.
Mm-hmm.
So if he went up real close to that tent and was there for a full 5 seconds, he would then be stuck there forever.
And he saw him at least 3 times.
Correct. No, yeah, I'm totally on board with that.
So their idea of this expansion of bubbles for the time loop that we get to see, that guy, there's no totems that were millions of years old, as they said on their road trip in there, was there. Like, that guy is stuck in that fucking time loop.
Yeah.
The gun is stuck in that time loop. Everything they cannot take. So, like, every piece of food they ate, everything they drank inside their bodies would be reset with that time loop and taken out of them.
Well, maybe not necessarily all that, but we don't know. But it's a high chance that they fucked up. Yes.
So, like the idea of the different time loops are good, but until you really sit there and think about what that area encompasses and showing that inanimate objects are also part of it.
Right.
If they didn't show inanimate objects as part of it, fine, that would have explained it away. But they purposely showed us that they are, therefore nullifying everything in the time loops.
Right.
That I can go on forever. That what else do you have on your
like I said, yeah, the same list. The first two are the same. There's my rant about the younger brother. We've already talked about that. Where do they sell their beer?
That's a great question.
Well, it's stated you can't leave the fucking bubble. How are you going to sell beer anywhere? You're full of shit. You haven't been selling beer anywhere. Like, again, like, where are you getting your brewing supplies? Where are you getting all these fucking kegs from? Right? Like, they say, oh, we grow our own crops. You're in a fucking desert, dude. You ain't growing shit. There ain't nothing out there.
Correct.
Like, I was just like, the more I thought about it, the more I was getting pissed off. I'm like, none of this makes any fucking sense. Like, they do not have the supplies, the crops, the necessary elements to survive for 10 fucking years without leaving this section of desert. Yeah. It's not possible. They would all die of starvation before the 10 years was up.
Mm-hmm.
The more I thought about this movie, the more pissed off I was getting, because it's like none of it makes any fucking sense. And it pisses me off even more knowing that they were like, oh, well, they're all in a time loop. Like, that's the explanation. Like, fuck you. I don't know who these guys are, but fuck them. Thank you for Loki, but fuck you for this movie.
Yeah. I think they were able to hone or at least bounce the ideas of time loops of other people, and people going, that's stupid. Why the fuck are you doing that?
No, it's not necessarily a bad idea, but you need someone to like follow continuity with these things, you know?
Well,
like,
I'm saying they had that soundboard to say your idea is stupid.
Yeah.
It does not make sense.
Correct. All right, that's a lot. I mean, yeah, I don't want to keep going on the list, but yeah, you get the gist.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so The Endless, 2018. What do you got?
I mean, am I going to want to watch the movie that's loosely the one before it and the one after? No.
Yeah, not at all.
It had potential. So, and it was indie, so I realized their budget is there, but lack of budget doesn't mean lack of writing.
Correct.
I'll give it 2 stunning revelations out of 10. It made me do research that I hated.
I didn't even bother. I was like, this movie pissed me off so much. I want it out of my life. Yeah. So, I did not like this movie. It's got huge fucking holes. I mean, there's enough interesting things in it to not give it a decimal point score. But it is a 1 stunning revelation out of 10.
This movie existed so Loki could run.
Yeah, right? I guess so. But that's it. Anything else you want to add?
Nope. Take us home.
All right. Now that we've reviewed what it means to be yourself, what happens when you know exactly who you are, but you're stuck in a room without a way out? So join us next time for films that save on set design, but double down on the suspense. We'll be stuck in a room with Green Room, VFW, and Vacancy. And all of these movies take place inside a room, or at least a building, one single building.
I'm excited. I haven't watched Vacancy in number of years.
Yeah. I've never seen VFW.
No.
I've seen Green Room several times. I believe I watched Green Room with you at one point in time.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing it.
Yeah.
And then, like, a couple days later, I told the wife, like, all right, you always thought this would be this grotesque Eli Roth style movie. You're going to sit down and watch it.
Yeah, there's really
within a week.
Right. Yeah, there's a couple of scenes where you're like, yeah, you know, like body horror kind of thing, but it's not bad.
No.
But yeah, Vacancy I know I've seen, but it's been a long time. I don't remember shit. So
Man,
it'll
that's
be
gonna
fun.
that's gonna be the last month, the last episode of the month of Salem.
Yay.
Then we'll get into some schlocky Christmas movies.
No, don't
I
remind
know.
me. Remember, we watch bad movies so you don't have to.
And this has been Graveyard saying, have you checked on the children?
This is Salem saying, long live the new flesh.
Good night.
All right.